Hello, fitness business nerds. Today I'm speaking with Matt Weaver, who is the founder of Results Transformation Center, which has multiple locations in the Sacramento, California area. And Matt is just, clearly filled with so much experience and expertise. We cover a broad range of topics. We talk a little bit about how to cultivate a beginner's mindset as a leader and how valuable that can be. We talk about lessons that he has learned while scaling to multiple locations, mistakes he's made over that time as well. We also talk a lot about how to find the right people for your team, especially as you're scaling your training gym. And so it's a great conversation covering lots of areas. So get a pen and paper ready and let's do this. The Business for Unicorns podcast is for fitness business owners who want actionable strategies to grow their business, take amazing care of their clients, and build a life and business they truly love. I'm your host, Michael Keeler, co-founder of Mark Fisher Fitness, and through Business for Unicorns, I'm a coach and consultant to industry-leading fitness studios around the world. Let's get started. How are you?
I'm doing great, Michael. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to connect with you here. I know right before we started recording, we were just talking about, you're in California. I've been in New York. We've both been in states that have been had a very understandably aggressive approach to dealing with COVID over this last year. And so I want to start with that just because I'm starting all my conversations with COVID because it's just, at the forefront of our lives. And so just thinking through this last year, Matt, what are the things you think you've been learning about yourself and your business going through this COVID roller coaster of an experience?
One thing I've learned is I don't have a crystal ball. My projections and modeling and forecasts and guesses have been destroyed a few times over. And that's also just created an awareness within me that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to come to the day with a beginner's mindset. Whereas in the past, I'm very decisive, and I'm just always ready to go with a plan. And now, I'm really approaching things with a much more, well, it depends. Let's see. Like, no one's ever done this before. And that's helping me because, trying to take the old, decisive, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to happen approach to everything wouldn't serve me very well in an environment where every day something new is happening. So for me, from a business perspective, that's one of the big things because I love certainty. I love, getting results. I love doing things my way. And none of those things are allowed right now, right?
Yeah, spoken like a true entrepreneur.
And, as soon as I let go of that, it was probably 2 or 3 months into it where I just said, look, nobody has the blueprint for this. Stop. Anybody looking at me for the answers for COVID right now is like, let me just admit I don't have it and that we're going to come at it together as we're all brand new to this day one. So anyhow, that, and of course, COVID itself has just touched every single part of every single person's life. So, we could obviously talk for days about COVID specifically, but we're in the middle of another big surge out here in California. And it's unfortunate because the circle kind of closes in from March to, do you know anybody with COVID? Not really. There's stories, tragic stories, young and old, of people who are impacted by it from the health perspective. And of course, even equally tragically is the careers that are lost, the jobs that are lost, the businesses that are lost. And so I'm also aware that we're in an acute state of trauma right now. And it's very real and it has to be acknowledged. Otherwise, you ignore that elephant in the room, you're going to cause even more pain, right? And everybody's in some sort of pain right now, whether it's a kid missing their friends, the people missing their gym buddies, working out the way we used to. The list is big. It's bigger than Santa's list this year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's great that you have the kind of awareness to recognize that that's a factor for yourself, for your community, for your family, for your employees. I mean, it's so important to know that there's this underlying sense of loss and trauma that has to be addressed. I love the way you said it. I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago, which was, you don't have a crystal ball. This year has taught many of us that kind of humility of like, all the planning and forecasting and decisiveness that might have worked before March is not working so well after March. And that you approach every day with this kind of beginner's mindset. I just want to elaborate on that for a second, because I feel like that idea of approaching leadership with a beginner's mindset is new to a lot of people. Not a lot of people think that to be a leader, you have to be the one who has all the answers, that is super decisive, knows exactly what to do, and can plan everything down to the little details. And we've learned that isn't true. So I just want to ask you, how do you get into that beginner's mindset? How do you find that space in yourself to approach conversations with, I don't know, we're going to figure this out together?
It's become more of a mantra, right?
Mm,
Because there's part of me that's going through things still, right? I'm not done going through what we're going through, right? We're
yep.
going through it, and this has been the first time we've actually had to be wounded together, right? It's been a time where, hey, we've all got our wounds and we've healed a lot of times, or somebody else might be hurting and somebody else is helping them heal, but we're in this thing like together all the way, and really reminding myself that over and over again, because there's this dependency as the boss or as the CEO that inherently I accept, I enjoy to some degree, and it's just because we've been doing what we've been doing for so long. It doesn't take a lot of energy mentally to make decisions about things that you feel like so well. But when you take that approach and apply it to something that, 15 minutes after you speak, you're a liar. And that's what was happening to me. I was telling my team, this is what we're going to do. And then I spoke, and then no sooner than I speak, a wildfire came, or some more changes to what the rules were. And I just, I don't want to tell my people something and then constantly look like I'm flopping, flipping, flopping. And so
Mhm.
I finally just came and said, listen, I sound bipolar, and I feel bipolar because I'm coming to you guys and I'm telling you one thing and then we're doing another. And somebody asked me just last week, well, what do you think? We were building the plan out for next year. This is what we do in December. We build out a plan for the year, right?
Mhm.
And well, should I, we were doing 100 days. I said, let's not do a year. Let's do 100 days. Well, why don't we plan out something? I said, because it's going to be a waste of our time and energy, because we're going to leave here, we're going to put energy into that, and then 5 minutes later, we're going to get some new information about a vaccine or about not having a vaccine. How
Yeah.
about we just take it in smaller chunks now? Because, again, I think everybody's brain craves certainty, but to know that people are going to come to me, want an answer, and then want that answer to hold, eventually it just got to be to the point where I said, hey, you know what? That would be unfair to you. It's certainly unfair to me. And I'm tired of sounding like I'm changing, like I'm indecisive. I'm not indecisive. I just don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen 5 minutes from
Yeah.
now. So we're, I think, embracing it a lot more now, because people aren't coming to me for, certainty around COVID,
Yeah.
right? What they're asking me is, here's what we have to deal with today. I've
Yeah.
got A or B option, and it's moving the ball further in a really tough time. And it's really hard to be a team member on any team who's serving people in COVID, right? And that's
Yeah.
another big piece that I have to remember, is that we are open in person, and we are serving people in a very risky
Mhm.
setting, and that fatigues everybody too, right? The whole employee body, top to bottom. So I'm just making it a mantra. I think it's baked deep enough into the team now where no one's coming to Matt for the COVID. What are we going to do? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
every day we'll figure it out. And that's the other big thing, is you cannot like leave something in play like you used to for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Mhm.
You got to constantly be checking in. This is okay. This is what we thought was going to happen. This is what's really happening. Is it okay to keep proceeding this way?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think
and
that's, yeah, I was going to say what you were saying, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think, this is such an important lesson, I think, for all leaders, that there can be strength in being honest about what you don't know. There can be strength in being honest about, like, hey, I know it sounds like I'm flip-flopping, but let me explain to you what's going on. That transparency is a really great practice. I mean, it sucks that that lesson has to come in the package that it has for many people this year, but it's a really great lesson, and it sounds like you do it really gracefully, right? I mean, and the idea that that's just a mantra for you of like, okay, well, how do I approach today with a beginner's mind and be honest about what I know, be honest about what I don't know? And I think that's it's a great message for our listeners. Yeah. Let me switch gears, because I know we could keep talking about COVID the whole time, and maybe some people want us to, but I don't want to. And so I want to talk about this, because a lot of our listeners and viewers are gym owners who maybe have one or two locations and want to have more. And as you know, as someone who's scaled to multiple locations, that process is just so different than the process it takes to open up one or maybe two gyms. When you get to 3 or 4 or 5 and beyond, it's a different beast. So I just want to, I know there's probably a million lessons you learned growing to multiple gyms, but I'd love to just hear like the top 1 or 2 things that you think you had to do to switch gears and change from thinking about a single or 2 locations to multiples. What are the things that felt like, looking back on it, were the biggest obstacles you had to face and the biggest lessons you learned in scaling to multiple locations?
think about that.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
know
ton of
it's a
lessons.
big question that covers many years.
It does. And I have to go back. It was 8 years with a single location.
Wow.
So it wasn't an overnight success. In fact, we retooled the first concept 3 times, and it was the second location that allowed us to kind of unleash ourselves from the shackles of our original product that we brought to market. We brought to market a franchise concept with a partner that didn't work out. Neither the partnership or the franchise are both gone. And we need to reinvent ourselves several times over. And we were able to do that in the first location and grow it. But we couldn't really do exactly what we wanted to do, because, when you have a big membership base and a big culture already embedded, it's a community, and you can't go make all of these disruptions to people's community and expect that they're still going to love their happy place. So we started a second location across town. And in that concept, I got rid of everything I didn't want to do from the first gym. And there was no controversy because I had no community yet. I just started it this way, and slowly but surely, ramped it up. And so that path, I really, I felt like that path was really good. And most people won't do that, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
they'll
I mean,
change everything in their existing gym.
yeah, including Mark and I. I mean, that's been a challenge for us at MFF. It's exactly what you described. Is we've just been, we have this community of so many, for us, ninjas, community of ninjas, and to start to change things dramatically on them just feels so unfair. And when we opened our second Bowery location, which has since closed due to COVID, we were able to kind of start fresh in many ways. We kept a lot of things that were same, but we streamlined things in a way that we always wanted to do at our first location, but just couldn't. So what you're saying already, I think, is a great lesson to listeners, because it's one that I had to learn myself, which is just don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Don't be afraid, as you grow and scale, to really, really change things, because I think that you have to be responsive to the market and responsive to what you learn over time. And we struggled to do that ourselves. So I'm glad that you're saying that first. So yeah, please keep going.
Yeah, no, it's I had to go back to that point to say, when did we start scaling, right? And so coming from there, I got to this was my new clay, right? The other one was, don't mess with it. It's paying the bills. They're happy. It's not scalable. How's that, right? The first one was like, it's not scalable. This concept isn't cool enough. It isn't unique enough. It isn't fun enough to do what I believe can be done with this. And so the next one was, all right, taking just what I want. I mean, and which was very little, right? It was very, very little. And it wasn't because the other thing was bad. It's just because this missing piece that I wanted in the other place, I couldn't have it. So rather than go and like put everything else around it, I just wanted to focus on it, which at the time was our team training platform, which we were coming from like a layered, 24-hour key card club, personal training club, plus a boot camp program that was just kind of exploding, which I really wanted to pursue this big group energy. And I think this was back in 2011 after, 2012, whatever it was, after several years of the first location. And then from there, because I really got to set it up, the way I wanted to set it up, I put the coolest light and sound system, a full DJ setup. It was way more like a nightclub than it was a fitness club.
Yep.
And it's my background prior to fitness was I was a nightclub promoter, and I wanted to pull that into the mix. And the group thing was, we were already killing it with boot camp, but I wanted to re-engineer what that looked like. And it exploded. And then a few years later, or maybe another year or two later, we started offering challenges. And when we started offering our 6-week challenge, I think we were the first ones in the country to do money back challenges at that time. Then we had an issue where we had to scale, because we had this issue originally back in the Living Social Groupon days, where our first location just got overwhelmed with, we had a really hot social thing, right? And so it exploded. And then with these challenges, the same thing happened between the challenges and Facebook. I mean, it was really not, hey, let's go get more locations. It really was not. It was like, hey, there's 78 people at 5 a.m. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
We're going to triple the price. And at the time, real estate market was really low. So I just went and chased as many really value second generation gyms, third generation spaces that we could just move in fast, and went fast because acquisition was just happening through a viral, what felt viral. I think we were adding a lot of dollars to the Facebook engine with it, but it was cheap, and everybody's friends were doing it across town, and we dropped it into another zip code. The place filled up.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of the way that we went, I had to go on this huge talent development, and whoever I started with, they were coming with me, right? Whatever their capacity was, whatever their skill set was, whether they'd been with me for a year or 3, they were the brightest and the best in the whole world to do this because they were already with me. And so we just kept going. And it was almost like we had no choice. The market was forcing us, and I had these little bugs in my ear that if you can get to 3, you can get to 10. And I kept running with that. But if I were to take one extrapolating lesson, because at some point there's a tipping point to that, my tipping point to that was we started saturating our own market. We had too many units in one metropolitan region. And as the Facebook cost scale went up, we found we were eating from the same auction, which was a bad news scenario. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, when I think about the one big overarching lesson is you need a system.
Yeah.
And we had a system for client acquisition, and we had a system for the experience. Otherwise, we couldn't have scaled to 11 locations, which was where we were when we peaked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
it's so funny you say that, Matt, because it's such a theme on this podcast, right? I mean, there's very few guests that ever come on this podcast and don't mention the word systems, right? Because so few small business owners, and mostly, and that's most gym listeners that are listening to us, they get far enough to get good at something, but they don't ever systemize it in a way that would allow them to have other locations. Right. And so I'm so glad you brought it up. It's something that keeps coming up on this podcast, and for you to reinforce it again, I think is great for our listeners.
Yeah, the reality of it is, the system also needs to change at a certain increment. Mm-hmm. And whether it's 3 or 5 or whatever, or maybe it's your geography, because I went into a second state also. There's no way systems could mature at the speed that we were growing.
Yep.
Without going outside and taking an existing system and leveraging it. So create, develop, recruit, grow, doing all of that internally. Looking back, I was like, well, if the growth would have happened a little more gradually, we could have put better systems together.
Sure.
But, we were just dealing with how can we serve the market. And I have no regrets in that approach. It's the lessons learned were really a byproduct of us responding to just a radical demand for something that no one had ever seen or done before. And it made us a brand in the marketplace now where we're at. But lessons learned is doggone it. I wish that right at 5, I would have been like, all right, let's hire someone smarter than us
Yeah.
to come and tell us what not to do.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is that I think the thing that I see when I'm talking to folks who are trying to scale their business, see that that they're most kind of afraid of, and they might not say it like that, but that's my interpretation of it, is this constant change, the constant evolution. Because people fall in love with their first business. They fall in love with their first location. And having the idea of constantly changing it and constantly iterating and being responsive to the market, being responsive to the talent you're acquiring, being responsive to, pandemics, all of that change and kind of creativity and nimbleness, I think is intimidating to a lot of folks because they have that first experience, and I certainly did, starting my first business and having it be a real love affair, having it feel like magic and feel like it grew so organically. I didn't have to have my access to all these dials and pulleys. It just kind of happened, and it was so magical. And so the idea of turning the business into something that is very strategic, that's very responsive to all the elements, I think that's scary for a lot of folks. And I think one of the most scary parts that I hear people hesitant about is growing the team, is finding the right people. So you just talk a little bit about what's been your approach to finding the right people over these years as you've needed more and more leadership, more and more just trainers, more and more people to help you with the scaling. How do you find the right people when you're growing like that?
I developed an internal team. And I mean, there was some point where that wasn't the smartest thing. But from a culture perspective and a community perspective and the formula is driven so much off of culture, community, and people that we just built around shortcomings, right? We were organic. I find people mostly from my community, right? Mostly clients who had success. And then it got to be about 50-50 where I recruit externally and get, trainers from other places with other backgrounds, but ramp up a bunch of customer service people and a bunch of sales and sales management type community directors from the membership base, because the membership base was oozing with enthusiasm and talent and great people, and still is. So it was just like, hey guys, we're looking for such and such. And we found a lot of people. And then later I found, okay, you can't do everything organically at scale. And started to kind of look at filling the holes with talent from outside. But what we do was so different, right? That somebody from a big conventional box gym, it would not have worked either. So we continued. There's a slow pace in terms of developing external talent or bringing them in. So we just kept developing our internal team up. And then, again, there was a point where, what we knew, what we could assemble, what we could put together, we had maxed that out internally. And I'd be the first to say, I said in 2017, no more growth. We cannot do more than what we've got on our plate right now. And at that point, the real estate market prices were going up, and my desire to take it past where we were had run out. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. We're not franchising. We're not licensing. We're operationally running 11 brick and mortar gyms. That's enough toilet paper and light bulbs for my taste.
Is that so funny? I love that you said that. Because it's true. It's all those logistics. Yeah,
right? Yeah,
it's true. It's true. But I think it's so wise of you to be able to recognize that even your best systems, even your best people, even your best intentions have a ceiling, right? That as you scale and grow, that that team you have can only do so much. You need a different kind of team. The marketing strategy you have can only stretch so far. You need a different strategy, and I think that's the part that hangs a lot of folks up. And so I'm
And
glad
then,
that
and then realizing when you don't want to do that, you
yes.
either bring someone else in and give up control, or
Hmm.
change the whole culture, change the whole vision. And
Yeah.
then that's, I can at least say with enthusiasm, it was my decision. And I said, this is the last unit we're adding. I'm not taking any more brick and mortar.
Hmm.
If we license, we license. If we franchise, we franchise. Which I had a bad taste in my mouth from being in a failed franchise previously.
Yeah.
But I remember it distinctively saying, well, what the heck are we doing? Why don't they come to us?
Hmm.
If we Uber them, it would be more fun than having all these zip codes and municipalities that we have to deal with in California too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so go back to my original question. I think, what I heard you say about staff was really starting with the people around you, the people
Yeah.
around you who know the culture, who get what you're doing, who are part of your community. And as much as you can scale pretty far by just training internally and promoting internally. And at some point, you reach the ceiling. You needed some outside experts, either as consultants or or bringing on really seasoned salespeople. And
Well,
to your point,
adapting the units to the employees sooner.
yep.
Our growth happened so fast that wasn't even an option to like dissect it and say, hey, you're good. You want this location, it's yours. You can license it, you can franchise it. Because I think the team could have taken an individual unit further in years versus
Yeah,
the number of units further in count.
got it. Yeah.
Which, in retrospect, I'd say that internal talent development path, if you're not trying to get to 20 locations, it's fine. In fact, I wouldn't do another thing at all. I would
Mhm.
focus entirely on building a team of people who are emphatic about the culture of the
Yeah.
community, and then send them to the training that you need, and have a training system inside of your team to
Yeah.
train them up.
Yeah. Let's dive into that topic too, because that's also a sticky one for a lot of folks. Is if you really want to invest in your team internally, keep growing them and developing them for the next level, the next job, the next series of responsibilities. What have you done to help your team keep learning? How do you inspire your team to keep growing and learning that next skill set? Because it's not all about the next certification. In fact, it's almost never about the next fitness certification. It's almost always that you want them to grow at being a manager. You want them to grow at being sales. You want them to grow at understanding marketing. You want them to grow at managing a facility. And that's not a weekend course most often. So what's your approach been to developing people inside and frankly getting them excited about learning? How do you do that? Because that's hard for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I've been fortunate. I just consider myself really fortunate, lucky, but I think it's internally cultivating, right? No, if they're part of that community and they're part of that culture, at some point, Matt can be an asshole. They might not be fully aligned with what I'm saying, but
Yep.
they're fully aligned with the core values of the company and doing what they need to do for the community, right?
Sure.
And so, I think at times as I pushed my team throughout the years, and push is exactly what I had to do, right? Because we grew together, and whatever they were promoted to, it wasn't because of their experience, it was because of their proximity, right? Their
Hmm.
proximity to me, or their proximity to the growth of this company that we had. And I'd get my magic wand out and say, poof, you're a whatever, right? But I think what my team would have always saw there is that I was always trying to cultivate the next opportunity.
Mm.
A huge part of my incentive to keep growing the business was, man, I'll lose great people if I don't have another role for them to aspire to, which makes our time right now real. We're in a really unfortunate and unique time, because if that was how I was always running the business through this growth curve, um, it made it very easy for me it was very clear to people, wow, this guy started as this, and now he's running the company.
Hmm.
Or they saw that, we started here, and now we're doing this 800 person event for us, kickoff. And, they're just like, wow. And I think they know that they're in a high pace, high growth, high potential environment, and they rise to the occasion. And a lot of it was push and pull, right? It was
Hmm.
Matt's asking for something insanely, ridiculously impossible. Again, and then walking away and then having done it afterwards. I mean, what's that feel like, right? Like and we all know that we've had people push and pull on us in ways that is very uncomfortable, right? And then, you got two options, right? You either resent them and walk away and then don't do it,
Yep.
or go through it with them. And then you accomplish it. And if you accomplish it together, the next time you ask for something ridiculous, insane, and unrealistic, they're like, come on, let's go do it. Right. And there's that compound effect of having those wins underneath your belt. So it was easy enough, if you would, to demonstrate it, like we can do it. But admittedly, if I didn't have people who believed that, all right, Matt's crazy, but we believe in his vision, then we wouldn't have gotten anything done. Right.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of it me going out and doing it first. With the second location I opened, I coached, I DJ'd, and I had a day job at the time, right? I worked at AT&T, and
Wow.
so no, it can't be done, or
Sure.
no, I already had a morning squad. I already started Booty Friday with booty music and booty songs and
Yep.
low body. Leg day was leg day, and now it's Booty Friday, and
That's amazing.
that contradiction sometimes is so big in people's head, but then they say, well, Matt did it. Same thing with big group orientations. We would sell, at one time, at 172 people in the room to sign up, and like 150 signed up. And, once people see that, they're like, okay, it's real. So demonstrate demonstrative leadership first. Don't ask people to do what you haven't tried to do yourself. And then, go, for the audacious goals together and accomplish something, stack the wins.
Yeah. And there's so many great tips there, all those things. Plus, you're really demonstrating this leading from the front. You also mentioned that, your team is willing to go above and beyond and follow you into the fire because you have a clear vision that you're all aligned on, because you have some values that you're aligned on. And one of the things that you didn't use these words, but I was imagining it sounds like it's just kind of like, kind of culturally in your organization, kind of culturally uncomfortable to kind of not be growing. Right, that people see all these examples in your organization of people who have kind of climbed the ladder, so to speak, and to not be doing that. I imagine is kind of culturally uncomfortable. That people have this expectation of, I'm going to keep growing, I'm going to keep learning, I'm going to keep challenging myself, and when it's not happening, that there's hopefully a tension there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is, and I think you felt a little bit more of that once I decided I wasn't going to bring new locations on. Because bringing new locations on kind of force the opportunities, and you're kind of handing them out, whether you've got the qualifications or not, because you've got the vacancy, right? But as we said, well, we're not going to go open new locations, it got more competitive, and it got you got a little bit of a different, not a little bit of a different culture, a very different culture, as you have to now see that uncomfortableness, right? You're like, well, where's the growth going to come from? Well, it's going to come from you. You have to grow now. The demand's not so crazy that you're going to get handed a job that maybe you weren't ready for. Now we're looking at how you're doing in the job that you have more closely to make sure you're the right fit for the job, because we can compare you to 10 other units. And, so the shift happens, and it happens really quick. Especially, I don't know anybody who added that many units, though. It's all, when I talk about number 2 to 11, that all happened in a 4-year span. So we opened a new unit after 6 months. Yeah. So I learned how to open units fast. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to start to wrap up. So one more question before we get to our final 5 kind of rapid fire questions. And so I think today, how many locations do you have?
We have 5 now.
Yeah. So talk to me about that part. So going from 11 and realizing, hey, I don't want to keep growing. I'm putting the brakes on. And then how do you decide, what is the process for getting down to 5? How do you make those decisions? That's got to be tough.
Well, normally it would be a lot more difficult, but we had 2. What happened is I was very intentional about growing this through a depressed real estate market, because I tried to do it in 2006, and then we had the economic collapse, and I watched what happened to everything around me in terms of its value, and the rent factors went down, 50, 60, 70%, which I think will come next year and the year after COVID, right? They're hiding it right now. There's an iceberg. And
I think it's already hit in New York, frankly. I
I'm
think
sure, I mean,
they're taking on water for sure.
it's still the iceberg though, because guess what? There's still ice on top.
Yeah.
Melting's not done, right? The nest is deeper, deeper, deeper down there, right?
Yeah.
So I knew big part of this was I was building on the value play, the low risk exposure model. And when I say low risk exposure model, and I got to tell this to anybody who's negotiating a lease, I stopped signing personal guarantees after the third unit.
Mm-hmm.
I said, look, I'll be happy to go do another unit.
Yep.
Not putting a personal guarantee on it. There might have been one or two exceptions I had to make because the landlord was doing a lot of work. But even then, I would say, okay, I'll give you a 2-year personal guarantee. And after I meet my rent obligations for 2 years, you're dropping my name off the lease. So knowing I was going in on a value, low risk, I'm like, look, I know what it's like to go work 50, 60 hours a week at AT&T to keep the first gym open for 8 years. I don't want to do that shit again. And that was because I had a personal guarantee.
Yep.
And I know people want a guarantee when they lease you something, and I can appreciate that. And it just got to a point where I said, okay, well, if we can't do it without a personal guarantee, we won't do it. So for starters, anybody who's listening now, post-COVID, especially in the fitness business, trust me when I say you'll sleep better at night if you don't have personal guarantees. Doesn't make it easy. It doesn't mean like you can just walk away from these obligations and everything in them at all. It'll come after you big time. But as the market for real estate peaked out, and it was very clear to me I was never going to see those prices again unless something like COVID happened, right? Mm-hmm. I said, I'm not renewing any of these leases either because these landlords are drunk with value in terms of how much they wanted. So in January of this year, I had a lease that was coming up in February, and it was a profitable gym, and I really wanted to stay. In fact, that landlord had 2 of my locations, and I offered him to swap because I had another year and a half at one location, but this lease was coming due. And he wanted to raise my rent by 30%, and he refused to let me flip-flop. I said, I'll give you 7 years at this location if you let me out a year and a half early at this other location, or I've got to let this lease go when it expires. And he didn't budge, and I didn't budge, and we closed it on February 29th, 2 weeks before COVID. Nothing to do with COVID, but I was like, thank you, Jesus, right? Anyone with a personal guarantee. So that was just timing. But knowing that you're at the top of the rent market and you shouldn't pay this rent just because you did a 20-25% profit margin for the last 5 years does not mean you shouldn't be willing to walk away from a location when it's time. And boy, I got lucky. Another location, Planet Fitness was coming in, and I've already had this happen more than once where I have an exclusive fitness deal to be in a shopping center, and then the landlord gets greedy and wants to bring in a 30, 40,000 foot Planet Fitness and violate the exclusive. This case, we bought out our lease. The landlord paid us to leave, again, on February 29th. So I closed 2 units weeks before COVID. Nothing to do. I didn't even know what Corona was besides fear, right? And then as we're here in California, we had the first shelter-in-place order in the country. The Sacramento wants to be San Francisco, so we do what San Francisco does. And I knew at that moment that was BS about 2 weeks, right? My business partner and I bet my birthday, your birthday, and he was Easter, and I was Memorial Day. And I said my birthday. Mm-hmm. And I was wrong, right? Like we didn't even open by my birthday. So as we were going through the numbers, right, the cash burn rate on all these gyms, we had a surplus employees and furlough employees, which is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And that, when we say trauma, that's the grief I'm still working through right now, right? Like sizing this team of amazing human beings that I cannot feed anymore. I cannot be their employer, which is heartbreaking. But we looked at all of our leases when we were in that closure and said, anything with less than 2 years, it's the bottom of the list. And so we prioritized the leases that had the most life on them. And then we went and had a conversation with every single landlord and got a temperature take. And we walked away from the 2 leases that expired in 2021 because it would seem kind of silly to be closed through March and then, open for 3 months or 6 months. And the landlords still want you to do it. The landlords I'm sure we're going to have unresolved issues for a while to come, right?
I'm sure.
But from just a real logical perspective, you don't need a big giant brain to figure out, okay, we're going to be closed for 6 months, then we're going to reopen for 6 months and then, renegotiate a lease. So once we got a feel for what landlords were enthusiastic about us being there together, we focused on those. We bought a building that consolidated 3 of our previous leased locations. We partnered with some real estate money there to take a building down and abandon a couple of other things and start up basically a new location that replaced 3 non-living assets. So it's we're not done. We don't know how long this will last, but I've got a good sense that in 2021, 2022, if I can defend what we're doing through that time, I can be in whatever zip code that we need to be in.
Yeah.
It's safe to be back, in the marketplace. And I'll go about it in a whole different way. I'll license, franchise, and grow through divesting units to previous seasoned team members. But the growth pattern there taught me so many lessons. And the lesson learned from all of this is don't be afraid to walk away.
Yeah.
If I didn't learn the lesson 2 weeks before COVID would have been a lot harder.
Sure.
Because I closed those 2 units on February 29th when COVID came. I said, what's 3 more? We just, it's heartbreaking, but it's kind of like having a cancer in your business.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to get it off. And even if you got to do poison to get it off, you got to get it off to let the rest of the business survive.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that story and that perspective, Matt, because I also just love so much how your decision around this is really based on the rent. It's really based on that relationship with the landlord. And I think a lot of brick and mortar owners just don't really appreciate how important that relationship is and how we really make money or not based on our rent in many cases. That is really the deciding factor really in the real estate game. And so when you can, negotiate as well as it seems like you negotiate, and not be afraid to walk away, which was, one of your core takeaways there. I think that's so smart. So I wish we could keep talking about this, but I want to be conscious of your time and start to wrap things up. So this has been such a great conversation, but I want to end with our final 5 questions. So these are 5 questions I ask every guest. I switched them up for this year, but they're just 5 quick questions. We'll do it kind of rapid fire, but if there's any you want to take more time with, you're absolutely welcome to. So you ready to do this? Let's do your final 5 questions. Yeah. Question number 1, Matt, what's one thing you love most about being a gym owner?
Watching the transformations of the spirit, because I have been in the business long enough to watch people, including myself, lose weight, gain weight, lose it again. And I know that's a process, and that's for a lot of people, that's just, it's going to be their life process. But the spirits come alive a lot faster than the pounds come off, and the enthusiasm towards just giving yourself time and taking care of yourself from people who struggle with that. And I didn't get into this business for the bodybuilder posers or the guys who had no problem getting into the gym. I got into this business because I knew it sucked to go to the gym, and it's not a very welcoming experience. And so to continue to have that, 15 years after we started, especially COVID has taught, right, that people their spirit gets born again in a matter of minutes, days, hours in our program, and that'll never get old.
Yeah, beautifully said. Question number 2, talk a lot about on this podcast about kind of, delivering an amazing experience for your clients and over delivering for them. So what's maybe the coolest thing you've ever done for a client?
The coolest thing we've done for a client, gosh, there's so many things. And
it could be for like something you did for all your clients. It doesn't have to be just one, but something you've done to really, to really wow your clients or over deliver for them in a personal way.
I think it's sometimes it's the small things, and I don't know that what's the one big one? But I mean, I'll just think of one right now is, we had a client who lost her daughter a few months ago, and we're in the middle of COVID. We're working out in our parking lot. We're fighting for our lives, and the team, without hesitation, puts together a fundraiser, a car wash, and touches this person's soul, right, in a really meaningful way. Or the flowers when somebody lost a loved one. But over the years, I think some of the things that just kind of are baked into our DNA is giving back and the spirit of that. And I think as much as that's not for maybe you're my paying client, it's not something I'm doing for you, but being able to be a part of something that's constantly giving back, has a scholarship program, helps other members of the community. I think that's the biggest thing we do for people is, give them a vehicle to do those things and pool together to do those things. And I still think that's the spirit that makes our program so special.
Yeah, great answer. I love it. Cool. Question number 3. When someone on your team does this, it makes you super happy. So what does your team have to do to just really light you up?
It's usually when somebody comes and tells me, that they were in a funk, and that they felt lost and discouraged, and that, this person was able to help them up and see them and acknowledge them and make them feel special. And I think that at the end, to encapsulate that, when you make somebody feel special and it's clear that person has been made to feel special, that's my favorite thing that my team does when my team does it.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. Question number 4. We haven't talked about marketing at all. So this will be the one rapid fire marketing question, which is, what is your most reliable strategy for generating leads? If you have to go generate leads tomorrow, what is the thing that you go back to again and again?
At this point in the game, COVID.
It's a weird time to be talking about any sort of marketing, but
yeah, I would say, and we're really 100% internally focused, right? Like, giving somebody amnesty or something like that to take care of all the acquisition we need to do right now.
Yep.
But in a legacy perspective, just long-term thinking, and I'm pretty sure this is what you're doing in your business, is showing people a program with a start and an end date and clear goals.
Yeah.
The word challenge is overused, but the reason it's overused is because people don't want to buy a membership. People want a solution to a problem. So my go-to has been reskinning, repackaging, what a 3-week, 6-week, 8-week, 10-week program might look like, because I know somebody wants an outcome with a start and an end date and a clear, this is what I get with it. And I wouldn't market any other way, any other, hey, come be a member at the best gym in town. That's ridiculous nowadays. That's like saying, hey, bill me once a month, whether I use it or not, right? Which is what the customer hears when you say, come sign up for a membership, right?
Yeah, sure.
And what they want is they want an outcome. They want results, right? They want something for that investment. And the better we can get at continually recreating and repackaging those, it's actually infinite too, in terms of what we can do with that. We've gone back to the well for what works over and over again, but that can be repackaged and put what today's customer needs. Today, a customer might need a kettlebell and a band and a yoga mat at home, right? And a heart rate monitor. That might be what they need with their package, and normally they don't need those things with their package because it's all in person. But it can all be bundled into a challenge, a program, and that's got to be a bedrock for anybody who's running a training gym or a transformation program. Is you have to run front end programs for clients to get success, and then they'll get hooked. Unless you suck. If you suck, you'll be doing it forever. Because you go back to our story too. We went from 1 to 11, not because of marketing, but because we had 80 people in the morning class, and for safety, We had to open another session. So fulfillment has to get done right for those programs to
Of course.
work.
All the great marketing and selling in the world is not going to be anything if the product is crap.
That's right. And
but I love it.
are the key for sure.
Yeah, that's it. I love you talk about challenges like this vehicle that can be reskinned and reorganized and reconfigured over time. And I think that's great for our listeners. Last question here. What is one thing gym owners can start doing better tomorrow? So one area of opportunity that people can start just making an improvement in their business tomorrow. Any pet peeves or things that you see all the time that people can really just start improving?
Well, one of them was taken care of with COVID.
Oh, sure.
Right. And let's be honest, right? It's some of our reputation was earned on a handful of people who just their gyms don't look clean. And I think you can't even underscore that. And I used to always hear Plumber always used to say, your gym's never as clean as you think it is. Right. And so
it's true.
As crazy as that is, it's like if you don't think that's going to be a big deal in the future, it's going to be a big deal. So you ask for one thing, and what I'm going to say is, hey guys, let's never earn the reputation they gave us.
Yeah.
When we come out of COVID, make your facility shine, because if your customers like my customer, which they may not be, they're going to be very concerned about all the environments they come into. And I'm really, really proud of, how we've handled that, how we are handling that. It's wild to me that we're working out in the parking lot right now because our facilities are immaculate. But nonetheless, cleanliness is going to be next to godliness. And one thing you can do as a gym owner moving forward is don't make us all look bad.
I love
your place tidy.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so smart, Matt, because it's always been number one. Right? It's always been one of the big reasons people leave gyms. And I think it's going to be more and more. Yeah, amazing. So you did it. That was your final 5. Thank you so much for doing that, my friend. Great answers. And let's wrap it up. I mean, thank you so much for doing this. Where can people learn more about you? What else do you have going on right now? Anything you want to promote?
Right now I've got my nose down in the fitness business. I've started actually, first of all, masking, right? Wearing a mask at the beginning before we started recording. I always wear my mask.
That's
but
good.
In all seriousness, during the downtime, I wanted to do something fun and creative. And so with my brother-in-law and my daughter and my niece, we opened a mask store. Great. And you can find us at Mask Mania, California, for a huge assortment of masks. And we're trying to, really make sure that people working out can have masks that they can work out in, and people can live their lives as we reopen safely with masks. And so that's just kind of fun. But otherwise, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, just keeping our nose down with Results Transformation Center. You can follow us online there. But I'm not promoting anything, but I had to give a plug for the California's first ever brick and mortar mask store.
I love it. I'll include links to all of that in the show notes down below so people can follow you and check out those masks. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your story, your expertise. I'll have to have you back on again when we're post-COVID so we can just spend time talking about other things that we love. But stay safe, my friend, and thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Hey friends, before you go, just one more thing. If you enjoy this podcast, you get value out of it, you enjoy listening, please share this podcast, comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Please share it with friends and family. We don't spend any money on marketing or advertising. And so the only way people find out about this podcast is from you. So please do everything you can to share it with friends and fellow colleagues in the fitness industry. We love making it and we want to keep doing it for a long, long time. So I appreciate your support. Go have a kick-ass day. Bye.